Before any people, kingdom, or city existed, there was only a pure and untouched space, a garden formed by the hands of the Creator himself. This place, known as Eden, was not only beautiful, it exuded harmony. Flowers bloomed effortlessly, animals lived together in peace, and each fruit ripened at the right time, without thorns or bitterness. The sky had a more intense hue, the wind blew gently, and the earth responded generously to every step that touched it. There, in this paradise where nothing was lacking, God molded the first man from the dust of the earth. He called him Adam, and when he breathed the breath of life into him, he not only gave him existence, but also purpose. Adam was given the responsibility to care for everything around him, to name the animals, cultivate the garden, and preserve balance. But even in a perfect place, there was something incomplete. The man was alone. It was then, while Adam slept deeply, that the Lord took a part of him, not from his feet, to be dominated, nor from his head, to lead him, but from his rib, next to his heart. From this part, woman was born, named Eve, companion, equal, and partner in everything. And so, the two began to walk as one, discovering together every corner of that garden that pulsed with life. Among so many fruit trees, two stood out. The first was the tree of life. The second was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it was about this that God was clear: do not eat from it. If you eat from it, you will surely die. It was a choice, a single instruction. In the midst of complete freedom, a limitation, not as imprisonment, but as an expression of trust and obedience. For a long time, this command was respected. Adam and Eve lived in complete peace. The animals approached without fear, the earth responded to the touch of their hands, and God walked with them in the cool of the day. There was no shame, no fear, no distance. But something was approaching stealthily. One day, a cunning-looking creature appeared. The serpent, symbol of cunning, addressed the woman with a question that did not require an answer, but planted doubt. Did God really say that you cannot eat from any tree? Eve, unaware of the poison hidden behind the soft words, replied that they could eat from all of them except that one, for touching or eating it would bring death. With a poisonous whisper, the serpent replied, "You will not die. God knows that the moment you eat it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like him, knowing good and evil." Those words sounded tempting. The fruit looked ordinary, but now it carried a promise of wisdom. The desire for something beyond what they had been given began to grow. Eve took the fruit. She tasted it. The taste was not strange. It was sweet, perhaps even familiar. Then she offered it to Adam. He accepted, and in that instant, both their eyes were opened. Not to heavenly wisdom, but to the awareness of their nakedness, their failure, their breach of trust. Quickly, they tried to cover themselves with leaves. They tried to hide among the trees. When they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden, they were afraid. For the first time, fear was born. "Adam, where are you?" asked the gentle voice, not out of ignorance, but out of love. The man replied that he hid because he was naked. God, with sadness in his voice, asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat the fruit that I commanded you not to eat?" Adam, instead of taking responsibility, pointed to Eve. Eve, in turn, blamed the serpent. It was the beginning of a fragmented reality, where responsibility was pushed aside and harmony began to crumble. God then declared the consequences. The serpent would crawl and be hated for all time. Eve would experience pain in childbirth and tension in relationships. Adam would struggle with the soil, for now the earth would produce thorns. And hardest of all, they could no longer remain in Eden. Paradise, once their home, became a memory. At the entrance to the garden, cherubim were placed with flaming swords, preventing their return. It was necessary to leave. It was necessary to move on. Outside, everything was new and difficult. The sky did not seem so welcoming, the soil no longer yielded its fruits easily, and the days no longer had the constant sweetness of Eden. But there, in the midst of chaos, something remained: God's promise. Adam and Eve began to build a new life. They learned to plant, to shelter themselves, to live with pain and effort. With each dawn, a different challenge arose. But they also discovered new feelings: compassion, persistence, courage, and above all, unconditional love for their children. They begot Cain and Abel, who would later follow different paths, one tragic, the other righteous. After them came many others. The earth began to fill up, and even with the weight of the fall, God's purpose was not canceled. The Creator remained close, offering guidance even from a distance. The days of Adam and Eve were marked by longing, but also by learning. They taught their children about the lost garden, about the choices that shape us, and about a God who, even in the face of error, does not abandon us. Eve, who had been deceived, learned to look deeply. Adam, who had been silent, learned to guide. Both, once naive, became wise. And even without Eden, they built a home where forgiveness and hope dwelled. Time passed. Wrinkles came. Vigor was gone. But the memories of the beginning never faded. On the quietest nights, when the wind blew softly and the stars filled the sky, perhaps Adam and Eve remembered the sound of God's footsteps in the garden, the freshness of eternal mornings, and the purity they once knew. But they knew deep down that this was not the end of the story. For God had promised that one day, from the woman's offspring, someone would be born who would crush the serpent's head. A redeemer, a new beginning, a reconciliation. Adam and Eve carried the pain of loss, but also the hope of return. And with that certainty, they taught their children and their children's children that even outside the garden, it was still possible to walk with God.